In a world where moose and squirrels live together in dysfunctional harmony, one man, well, two men come together to bring you the most useless shit you never knew you needed to know. Welcome to the Moose and Squirrel Show.
Not the Moose and Squirrel Show. The fucking Moose Show, bitches. Hey now. How's it going? Happy Sunday. Let me know if you get some sound here. I had issues last time I was doing this out here, trying to move back out into the studio. You guys have sound? Please let me know before I get started and make a complete ass out of myself and talk when you can't hear me. Dropping shit on the floor already. Do we have sound? Brother D. Please somebody tell me if we have sound. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yes, sounds good. Outstanding. I didn't fuck it up this time. That's awesome. Welcome to the show. Little Moose and Squirrel for you. And my cigar. How's everybody doing? Hope you had a good Sunday. Yes, we have sound. Yes, thank you. That's all that matters. We get sound. We get video. You can see me. And the fucking closed captioning. I gotta figure out how to make that stop. I know what I'm saying. I don't give a shit if you do. Closed captioning off. If you need to turn closed captioning on because you don't understand what I'm saying, turn it on. But I don't need it on my side. Alright, great. Move the fucking thing out of there. Back out in the studio. Yeah, quiet Sunday today, absolutely. Not much going on. John is on vacation with his wife, so there is no squirrel today. It is just Moose, so I get to talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. And I probably burnt the topic that he wanted to talk about, but hey, he's not here. He doesn't have a say. Sounds as good as Jim can sound. Hey, thanks, Doug. Derry Doug, much appreciated. Town Council, Derry, New Hampshire. The man behind the magic of the Jason R. Flood Memorial Foundation in Pizza Stock. If you guys don't know what that is, go on Facebook, search for Pizza Stock, search for Jason R. Flood Memorial. He does a lot of work with suicide prevention, suicide awareness. If you guys are not aware of that, you need to be. Doug does a lot. He's a town council here in Derry, New Hampshire. I'd say he's a great guy, but, you know, I don't want to inflate his ego. Doug liked it better when I had no sound. Foofy! Hey, how are you, Foofy? I got your couch over here. Want to buy a couch? Maybe a kegerator? Cheap. So today, we're going to talk about all the crazy shit we've ever seen on TV. Some of us may not have seen some of these events. You may have. Let everybody know right off the bat. If you are triggered by certain events, you might want to turn off the show. If you're not triggered by Moose and Squirrel, you might not be triggered by some of these events. You might be. There is no graphic content, but there are definitely some stark reminders of some really dark times in our history. So you may not want to watch the show if you're triggered by certain events. I'm pretty sure if we're talking live TV events, you can guess what some of them are. And yes, they will be covered in here. No graphic. There's no video. It's just, I got some pictures with each of these. Nothing graphic, but. Doug, you're welcome. Hey, we appreciate everything that you do. Nothing graphic, just kind of going through, reminders of some funny stuff and some not so funny stuff that's happened. And most of these things are not funny, but I did mix in a couple somewhat comedic events. Can't have it be all doom and gloom. So how's everybody? How's your weekend? Everybody had a good weekend. I'm glad the cooler weather is here. We all know I am not a fan of the heat. August is not kind to me. What, these last couple of days? Kim Douglas. Hey, my number one. Kim, thank you. So I'm gonna show a bunch of events that have happened. Some of them happened before me, but kind of building up to why everybody's so addicted to TV and why people stopped being able to turn away from it, and you had to watch TV every day because you might have missed some of this shit. Jeremy, hello. Thanks for joining us. John is he's on vacation somewhere up in the Great White North with the wife. They had planned a vacation for this week, so he is not around today. Probably a topic he would have liked to have been part of, but hey, you snooze, you lose, man. You know, that's how it is. So we're going to get into it here. And we're going to start with probably the event that really got this all going. I mean, I think this, to me, you know, obviously I'm only 50, so I'm not that old. I wasn't around when this happened. This was probably the first really shocking thing that everybody had ever had a chance to see on TV. I don't know how many people in my audience were alive for this, but this is really what got it all started. Lee Harvey Oswald, guy that shot Kennedy, when they were taking him to jail and moving him from FBI custody to the jail cell, was shot in the chest by a guy named Jack Ruby, who was a reputed mobster. And he walked right up on live TV and shot Lee Harvey Oswald right in the chest. So we'll never know if Lee Harvey Oswald, in fact, was the guy. There's plenty of evidence that says that he was. Plenty of evidence that says it was a much wider conspiracy. And kind of weird that you would have a mob guy assassinating the guy that assassinated the president. But this is really where it all started. Everybody saw this on live TV, and everybody was like, holy shit, nobody wanted to turn the TV off. Got to watch a guy that was reviled get shot right in the chest, getting what he deserved. But I don't think anyone on here is old enough to remember this. This happened almost 10 years before I was born. But I think that, you know, when I was doing the research for this show, that really, to me, was, you know, what got this all started, what got people addicted to watching the news and watching TV and seeing really crazy stuff like this on TV. Next, man walks on the moon, 1969, July 20th. Neil Armstrong, first man walking on the moon. Small step for mankind, small step for man, giant leap for mankind, whatever the fuck he said. Everybody got to watch him take his first steps on the moon live on TV. Although there are some crazy people out there that say that this was a conspiracy theory. They say we never landed on the moon, that we made it up. And, you know, why have we never been back? Kim, as the story goes, Frank Sinatra was the go-between JFK and the mob. So it makes sense that the mob guy takes him out. Yeah, I guess you could say that, because JFK was definitely linked to the mob. Was not the cleanest of presidents. If he was alive today with all the social media and you know, everybody having a cell phone camera in their hands, I'm sure you would have heard a lot more bad stuff about this. But definitely, you know, the JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot live on TV, definitely craziest thing, probably the first crazy thing. Second, everybody got to watch first man walk on the moon. I'm sure there's at least one crazy person on my on Moose and Squirrel here that doesn't believe that we walked on the moon and thinks that the whole moon landing was fake. I think you're a weirdo, but hey, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Again, happened before I was born. I was born in 72. Jeremy, I have newspapers from then my mom saved. From the moon landing or from the JFK Lee Harvey Oswald assassination? I'd love to see them. Take a picture of them. I'd love to see the headlines. Either way. Either or. But yeah, you know, everybody got to see the first man on the moon. You got to ask why we've never been back, why they haven't taken cameras up there. You know, if it was that easy to get to in 1969 and the technology is advanced to the point where it is, why don't we go back? We should go back and clean up some of the junk we left there first and foremost, because there's a couple tons of garbage that have been left on the moon, including poop. So they probably should go and clean up their mess, because I know if they left that shit in your house, you would definitely want them to go and clean up the mess. But those are the first two that happened. That was before I was born. Two of the craziest things. And then I'm going to move on to some more modern stuff. First thing that I remember, I was in 7th grade. I think it was my second tour of 7th grade. I was in Spanish class, and Mr. Medeiros, who was our Spanish teacher, wheeled out. Everyone loved when they wheeled in the TV with the VCR on it. And he wheeled in the TV and said, we're not doing Spanish today. We are going to watch the space shuttle take off. And the whole class got to sit there and watch the countdown live on TV. and watched the space shuttle take off, and it got up into the air and it exploded. And no one in the class had ever seen the space shuttle take off, so they thought that was what was supposed to happen. And when it blew up, most of the kids in the class, we all clapped. Jeremy watched it live. I think most of us did. Most of the people my age, you were probably in elementary school, junior high school, maybe high school, depending on your age. And we watched this ship blow up live on TV. It wasn't until I got home from school that day and you started hearing the adults talk. I was 14 years old, and you started hearing the adults talk about the spaceship blew up. And we didn't know when it happened. Eric Testa had his own Challenger disaster. Yes, with the O-ring, the tire blowing out on your Challenger, and you smashed it into a wall. Yeah, no, we all, as kids, we saw this happen live on TV, and everybody thought that's what was supposed to happen. Most of the kids in the class, most of the kids in school, nobody knew that it had blown up. I remember the teacher turning the TV off immediately after it happened, and he said, I don't think that was supposed to happen, and he left the classroom. And he came back just as the bell rang, so he never got a chance to tell anybody anything, and we went about the rest of our day. Didn't know till I got home from school that the Challenge is not supposed to blow up. Lisa had to pee, almost missed the explosion, yes. Nope, I got to see it live on TV as it happened. Crazy. That was my my Lee Harvey Oswald moment. That was, what made me say, hey, I need to watch the news. And as a 14-year-old kid, I started watching the news every night to see all the crazy shit. Unfortunately, excuse me, I think that really is what led to the news that we have today, with the being, the over-sensationalization of everything, and they try to make everything, all these, to get viewers to watch. That's why when you watch the news, it's almost always negative, because that's what gets people to watch it. Stuff like Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot and the Challenger blowing up. Those were the type of things that glued people to the TV. Jeremy Cook and the teacher shut it off and went to a meeting and didn't know what to tell us. Yeah, the teachers were all just, they knew what happened. They knew that it wasn't supposed to explode like that, but as kids, you figured that was the Challenger leaving the atmosphere and getting into outer space. You had no idea that wasn't supposed to happen. Crazy stuff. So that to me, that was what drew me in and made me, I started reading the newspaper, the daily evening item in Lynn, Mass. I started reading the newspaper every day. I started watching TV. I started watching the news every night at 6 o'clock. I would sit down after dinner, before dinner, whenever, and I would sit down and watch the news. And this was the event that made me not want to miss anything ever again. I would watch the news all the time. Next one, Bud Dwyer. This is one that a lot of people have probably heard of now, but didn't actually see it live on TV. Bud Dwyer was a Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, and he was accused of taking bribes. And the state of Pennsylvania was pressing charges against him. He was adamant that he was being framed and that he was being set up as the fall guy for this, and that none of it ever happened. And live on TV, because of all the pressure from the news media, from the police, from the people, he decided to resign as a congressman from Pennsylvania. And as he was resigning live on TV, he handed out a bunch of envelopes to people that were in the room that had kind of final letters and saying goodbyes. And the last envelope he pulled out was a manila envelope, and he pulled out a .357 Magnum, and everybody started freaking out because they thought he was going to start shooting people in the crowd. And the picture that you see on the screen was moments before he put the barrel of that .357 Magnum in his mouth and pulled the trigger. And live on TV, everybody got to see him blow his brains out. And that wasn't the most fucked up part about it. The most fucked up part about it was the guy was eventually exonerated, and it was proven that he did not take the bribes, and that it was a witch hunt against him. And the guy just had enough, couldn't take it anymore, and live on TV. Yeah, if it bleeds, it leads. That's it, Jeremy. If there's a car crash, it's more important than anything else that goes on. Fires, car crash, shooting, whatever happened that is, overly dramatic stuff. That's always the top news stories. You never hear the good news. Somebody rescuing a kitten from a tree or crazy stuff like that. That's never the lead story. It's always the bad stuff, because that's what people tune in for. People want to see somebody doing worse off than they are. And the news, yeah, hey man, nice shot. Yeah, who is the name of the band? There's a band that has a song that's called Hey Man, Nice Shot, and it's about this. It's about Bud Dwyer shooting himself live on TV. I can't remember the name of the band. Lisa, hate the news, haven't watched it in years. I don't watch the news anymore. I probably haven't watched the news in probably almost 20 years. If there's a big event that comes up, I will watch the news. Typically, I won't watch like TV news anymore. Channel 4, Channel 5, Channel 7, Fox News, CNN, because although it's all slanted, it's 90% political. It's 90% garbage. I can't be bothered to watch the news anymore. I do my own research. I'll get online. I check Fox News and I check CNN, and I'll read the same story on both and see how they're both trying to spin it in their own direction, and then try and find something that's a little bit more down the middle so you can, you can actually get the truth. Filter, yes, Eric. Filter. Hey man, nice shot. That's the song about Bud Dwyer. But happened live on TV, but probably unless you were from Pennsylvania, you didn't get to see it. But if you were from Pennsylvania, it was a big deal back in 1987. 1989, being a huge baseball fan that I was back then, I'm still a fan. Not as much today as I used to be. But World Series, it was the San Francisco Giants versus the Oakland A's. It was the Bay Area, both teams from the Bay Area. And October 17th, 1989, there was a 7 on the Richter scale, 7 or higher, earthquake that happened as they were doing the pregame. The Channel 5, I believe, was the channel that was showing the game, and everybody had tuned in for the pregame, and you had Al Michaels and whoever the fuck was in the booth with Al Michaels, and they were talking about the game, and they were talking it up, and all of a sudden you saw the camera start to shake, and then they lost the feed. And everybody's like, people on the East Coast like me were like, yeah, technical. Believe me, if anybody knows technical difficulties, it's the fucking Moose and Squirrel show. And we were watching, waited, about 20 minutes later, the feed comes back on, and they're talking about how they were evacuating the stadium, that there was a massive earthquake. So you didn't actually get to see the earthquake as it happened, but the news footage after that, there was if you look at the picture here on the screen, the top one is just, 89 World Series. This was after they had started I'm sorry, it was before the fans had started getting into the stadium. So you can see some of the fans that were left inside, and the bottom picture is a picture of the Bay Area Bridge where the upper deck had collapsed, and there was some pretty disturbing footage on there of cars that couldn't see that the section of the road in front of them had collapsed, and people were driving right off of it after the earthquake. It was pretty crazy, and getting to see an earthquake happen live on TV and all the news footage that you started to see about this, it was pretty dramatic. People never saw anything crazy like that, and all the buildings that caught on fire and buildings falling down and the highway falling down. This was I saw the aftermath, but really they lost the video footage, so you didn't actually get to see the earthquake, but you watched it happen live on TV. It was the panic after. And I've actually been in an earthquake, but it was like a 3 on the Richter scale. I was in San Diego traveling for work, and I was sitting in my hotel room, and all of a sudden the entire hotel room vibrated. And I was like, at first I thought I had my phone on the desk next to me, and I felt the vibration, and I'm like, oh, it must be my phone. And I reached over and grabbed my phone, and it wasn't the phone, and the room was still vibrating. And I'm looking, and you could see everything in the room vibrating. And this was only like a 3 on the Richter scale, really low. Those ones happen, they never make the news. And the whole room vibrated. I was like, holy shit, what the fuck? And I went down to the desk, and I was like, hey, is that an earthquake? And the guy's like, yeah, that's nothing, though. Those happen all the time. And the people down there are so desensitized by them that when there's an earthquake of that magnitude, nobody even bats an eye. But the big ones are crazy. Lisa went to San Francisco a bit after that. You could still see the destruction almost a year later. It took them like almost 4 or 5 years before they rebuilt that section. It was a pretty significant earthquake. It was one of the bigger ones that had happened up in that part of the country. California's, famous for 2 things, loony liberals and earthquakes. And this was definitely one of the bigger ones, and there was tons of destruction. The Bay Area, the Bay Bridge, that top section that had fallen down, the massive sections had fallen down. It was closed for a year. Becky, we have small earthquakes here, but I've never felt any. Yeah, you're up in Washington State, up close to Seattle, I think, somewhere's up that way. Yeah, we've had them in New Hampshire, and they said, oh, there was an earthquake last night. It was a 1.2 on the Richter scale, and everyone's like, okay. I've had 18-wheelers drive by the house that shook it more than that. But there was a lot of video footage after the earthquake of security cameras that caught it, and you could see shit falling off the shelves and people scrambling for their lives. There was a smaller quake when I was, this is Lisa, there was a smaller quake when I was there. Everyone was so uninterested in the little shake. It was upsetting though. Yeah, if you're not used to it, when I was in that one, that, like I said, it was like a high 2, low 3. So it's just, if you've ever been near a train and a train goes by, or you've been in a building where a big 18-wheeler drives by and you get that little bit of a vibration in the building, that's basically what this was, only it lasted probably about 30 seconds. And the little ones, people there just like, it's nothing. It's like getting a strong gust of wind up here in the Northeast. Nobody bats an eye. Not a big deal. But yeah, earthquake live on TV. Gulf War. I was a senior in high school when this happened, and I remember Wolf Blitzer was on TV on CNN. One of the few times that I would actually stomach CNN, back when they actually still showed unbiased news coverage. And I remember seeing Wolf Blitzer all over the TV all day, every day. Couldn't get away from it. Even when you watch channels 4, 5, 9, everybody had the CNN feed. They all had Wolf Blitzer out in the Middle East, and watching rockets and listening to buildings blow up. And you got to see war live on TV. Jeremy Cook earthquake. We had one about 7 or 8 years ago. It shook my house. Karen and the kids were like, what the hell was that? I said, an earthquake. Yeah, if you don't know what it is, it's kind of like, what the hell's that? The small ones. The big ones, I don't know. But yeah, CNN, Gulf War. Everybody came home from school every day, and I didn't put on the video games. I didn't need to put on the video games. I could put on TV and watch rockets and all the tracer rounds and listen to Wolf Blitzer talk about how crazy everything was going, and watching all the places get bombed and blow up. Pretty dramatic. It was a lot different than you thought that it was gonna when you think about war. Obviously, he wasn't right in the middle of it. You know, he's filming from a distance, but it was still pretty crazy, especially every time he would get on air and those air raid sirens would go off, and he would very quickly have to get off air, and then everybody was all panicked. Is he going to come back on? Did they get blown up? And then he'd come back on an hour or so later, and yep, missiles landing everywhere. Kind of crazy that somebody had the balls to stand in the middle of that. So you got to give Wolf Blitzer credit to actually have the balls. I mean, he pretty much, wrote his own check at that point, because he did have the balls to go over there and be that close to the action. And like Jeremy said earlier, if it bleeds, it leads. People were glued to their TVs. People were watching CNN 24 hours a day to see all of the Gulf War coverage, and it was pretty crazy. And near the end of the war, if you remember anything about it, near the end of the war, a lot of the Iraqi soldiers were surrendering to CNN camera crews because they had been cut off from their supply lines, and the CNN camera crews were out there filming, and all of a sudden these soldiers, enemy soldiers, would come up and were trying to surrender to them, saying, hey, we want to surrender, we don't want to die, because they had no ammo, they had no food, they had no water, it had been days, and just seeing those guys on air coming up and surrendering to guys with video cameras was pretty crazy. Something that you never thought you'd ever see. Get to see war live on TV. My dad was a 2-tour Vietnam vet. Very rarely did he ever talk about war. My grandfather was in World War II, and I was only, I think, 6 years old when my grandfather passed, so I never had a chance to really talk to him much about it. But you never really got the old timers to talk about the stories, and you didn't have to with this war because you got to watch it live on TV. Pretty crazy stuff. LA riots, 1992, started April 29th. This was the result of the Rodney King verdict, when they found the LA Police Department not guilty of beating the ever-living fuck out of Rodney King. And you could put the Rodney King beating on this. That necessarily didn't happen live on TV, but somebody caught on video, I believe it was 5 LA policemen beating the ever-living fuck out of Rodney King, who was high on cocaine, led him on a high-speed chase. They pulled him out of a car and just, for like 10 minutes, just with their batons, beat the ever-living fuck out of the guy. They had the video evidence of it, and somehow managed to find the police not guilty, which was quite the travesty of justice. And the people of LA freaked out, and they started tearing down buildings, burning buildings. They burnt whole city blocks. It was pretty nuts, and it was all over TV. You got to watch it. All that news helicopters were up there, and this picture right here, the firefighters trying to put out some stores that had caught on fire. They did some significant damage, and it was like a weeks long before they stopped. And the police at that point had just pulled back, and they said, "We're not even going to get in the middle of this. This is too crazy. We're just going to have to wait for them to stop." And you see all day long, you know, the riots that we've had recently. You know, they go on for a day or two, and then they stop. This was almost a week straight, day and night, 24 hours a day, of people just burning down buildings, shooting up buildings. You see the video of the Korean guys standing on their rooftop with AR-15s trying to defend their businesses so people wouldn't loot and burn down the businesses. Becky, my parents didn't let us watch the news, so most of these things I never heard much about except when I heard in school. Probably a good thing, because if all you ever watch is the news, you don't think anything good happens in the world. Then, especially in the 90s, you know, late 80s, early 90s, early 2000s, and even today, you put on the news and just count, get a little counter and count how many negative stories are on the news, how many positive stories. There ain't many positive. It's almost all negative. Hating somebody, hating this, hate crimes, violence, fires, war. You don't get a lot of feel-good stories out of the news, and it just makes you miserable. If you watch too much news, it's definitely going to make you miserable. This scared the shit out of me as a kid, because I was like, you know, what if they start doing this around here? I grew up in Lynn. I was far enough from Boston that if it happened in Boston, it probably wouldn't have affected me. But you still had to think about it. You know, growing up in a city of 80,000 people, you know, what if this shit happened here? You know, what do you do? Just, you can't imagine all the people that were actually there, that lived in those neighborhoods, that for an entire week it was like a war zone. Fires everywhere, people looting, vandalizing, burning down buildings, burning cars, flipping cars, and no police presence to be found. They completely pulled back from the area, and they said, let them fucking burn it down, because they just didn't have the manpower to fight it. They just let it happen. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, they just basically looked at it and said, let's contain it, keep it in that area, and, you know, eventually they will, Sean Smith, 12 million people currently in LA. Yeah, see, that's just it. Growing up in a city of 80,000 like we did, you just like, shit, what would we do if it happened here and there's only 80,000 people? 12 million people doing that crazy shit? No thanks. Didn't want any part of it. Could we tell if it happened in Lynn? Depends on what part of Lynn. I grew up in the privileged part of Lynn. I grew up in Ward 1, so I grew up in the nice part of Lynn. But if you live towards Kerwin Circle or somewhere in that part of West Lynn, yeah, well, you know, maybe not. Not as would have been obvious if it was if it had happened in East Lynn, Ward 1, where I grew up. New Hampshire, 1.5 mil. Yeah, it's 1.5 million people, and probably 70% of them live in 5 cities, and they're spread out pretty wide. You got Concord, Manchester, Derry, where I live, Nashua, and Salem. Those 5 towns are probably 70% of New Hampshire's population. If you go north of Concord, there's nobody there. There's just not a big population there. Ward 1 still there. Ward 1. My mom actually sold her house a couple years ago. The only person I know that still lives down there is my Aunt Dolly. Aunt Dolly still lives in Ward 1. My cousin Kim, who's a frequent viewer of the show, she moved out of Lynn. Most people I know have either moved up to New Hampshire or moved to Peabody, Beverly, Salem, Danvers, just getting out of Lynn. But yeah, got to see that riots, crazy whole week of the LA riots on TV. Waco siege, the Branch Davidians. So the ATF, this happened it started in February 28, 1993 and ended April 19. So the siege started on February 28th, but I believe the attack was April, I want to say it was almost like April 15th. It was a few days before the 19th. I could be wrong. But the Branch Davidians had a compound, and the ATF heard a rumor. They had a informant that said that they had explosives and they had automatic firearms there. And it was just like any other crazy cult where there was rumors of sexual misconduct, child molestation, all kinds of crazy stuff that unfortunately they could never prove, because the ATF tried to raid the compound and found out that, yeah, they did have some automatic weapons, and they did have some explosives because when they first tried to attack the compound, there was a couple ATF agents that were killed trying to get into the compound. So they regrouped, they went back, and they brought in tanks. And yep, don't care what you got for a gun. If the other guy's got tanks, you're probably going to lose. There's still some debate on who started the fire, but you got to watch this live on TV as the ATF attacked the compound and started ramming the tanks through the sides of the buildings, and all the buildings caught on fire. And most of the people inside, including David Koresh, who was the leader of the Branch Davidians, all died. I don't know the exact number of people, but it was a lot, and this was definitely one of the crazier things that you saw happen on TV. It's, you know, to me, this is one of those things when the government goes bad. There was no reason for them to attack. Eventually, they were going to run out of food and water and have to surrender. You have food and water. They should have waited it out. They chose not to, and it cost lots of lives. There was ATF and FBI agents that were killed during the raid as well, so it wasn't like it was a one-sided loss. And depending on who you talk to, they say that the ATF used flashbangs, and the flashbang started the fire. The ATF says, nope, the Branch Davidians started the fire. They did that as a diversion, and it ended up burning the whole building down. But either way, it was embarrassing for the United States government, for the ATF, for the FBI, that it ended the way that it did, because it really didn't have to. Janet Reno was the Attorney General of the United States, and she got on TV and basically admitted that it went way wrong. Went way different than they thought it was going to, and everybody got to see it happen live on TV. You can still find the videos of this on YouTube of the entire attack. It was, you know, they had camera crews there, and everybody got to see this happen on live TV. Yet, Jeremy, big clusterfuck. 100%. Total clusterfuck. And I said there was going to be some on here that were going to be, triggering. Oh, but not this one. Haha. The OJ chase. Another LA clusterfuck. 1994, June 17th. OJ Simpson, they put a warrant out for his arrest for the murder of Nicole Simpson, his wife, and Ron Goldman, who was a waiter at a restaurant. Depending on whose story you believe, Ron Goldman was banging OJ's wife, ex-wife. Some people say she left her glasses at the restaurant, and he just happened to go to return them. And either way, somebody slaughtered Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson. Killed them both. And the police put out an arrest warrant for O.J. Simpson. And O.J.'s former teammate, Al Cowlins, I think his name was. Not sure. I should have done the research on that. But was trying to get O.J. out of the city, trying to get him away, because they knew the police were coming, and the cops found him, and there was the slowest high-speed chase in the history of the world. He was doing about 35 miles an hour. The guy driving the car was talking to the police on the phone. Everybody remembers him saying, "I got OJ in the car." And they drove around LA for, a couple hours anyways before they finally surrendered, and it was all over the TV. It was hours of the LA police just following this white Bronco around, waiting for them to run out of gas so that they could arrest OJ Simpson. Kind of anticlimactic. The LA police didn't pull him out of the car and beat the bag out of him like they did Rodney King. Probably because they knew the cameras were there. In other words, that's probably what would have happened. The glove didn't fit. If the glove does not fit, you must acquit. Johnny Cochran, OJ's lawyer. The whole trial. So not only was the chase on TV, the entire trial was on TV, and you got to watch every day of that trial on TV. And what an absolute clown show the entire trial was, and just shows you how fucked up when you hear about people getting away with crimes. If you watch that, there was the one cop that they proved had planted some evidence against OJ, which pretty much exonerated him because a lot of the evidence didn't fit, and the cop was disgraced. He was the lead detective, Mark Furman, I believe his name was. And that was also just an absolute, the whole trial was a clusterfuck, and then he was found not guilty. And people were expecting, after the end of the trial, if he was found guilty, they were expecting the LA riots too. They were expecting people to go out and completely riot. But he was found not guilty, and he was freed and became a free man. And then, foolishly, a few years later, he had a lot of his stuff was stolen. A lot of his sports memorabilia was stolen, and him and a couple of his friends found out that in fact they knew the guys that had stolen it, and they were in a hotel room in Vegas, and OJ and a couple of his friends grabbed shotguns and ski masks and went and stole his stuff back. And unfortunately, even if it's your own stuff, you still can't do a home invasion into somebody's hotel room with shotguns and ski masks and beat the bag out of them and take your own stuff back. That's a no-no. So that's what OJ ended up going to jail for. It was years later, had nothing to do with this, but was Jeremy, yep, big media circus. The whole thing, right from the murders all the way through his trial, the whole thing was on TV. Not the murders, obviously. I don't think anybody would have forgotten seeing people getting murdered live on TV, but this was just it was a clown show. It was a shit show right from the beginning. Everything about it, and this was the sensationalization of everything that the news media just shouldn't do. And they would always put the car chases on TV until a bunch of them ended badly, and then they're like, yeah, we probably shouldn't be putting this on TV. But complete clusterfuck. But I believe he's a free man now. I think OJ's out of jail now. Guilty or not, I don't know. Don't really care. Doesn't affect my life. Dale Earnhardt. Kim, you're on here. You're a big NASCAR fan. Did you watch this? The Daytona 500 from 2001, February 18th. I remember, I'm not a big NASCAR fan, but I was actually watching this one. I saw the accident, and I had seen NASCAR accidents with the cars flipping up and down, spinning in the air, catching on fire. When I saw this, didn't look like a big deal. Looked just like an accident. And if you look at the picture, this is the actual picture of the crash. The 36 car, the M&M car, is in worse shape, and that driver walked away without a scratch. Yep, Kim, you did watch it. Jeremy Cook watched this also. If you weren't a sports fan, you probably didn't watch it, but I'm sure you've seen the video. The crash looked harmless. It didn't look like the crash was a big deal. He made contact with the M&M car behind him, spun him into the wall, hit nose first, and then got pushed down the way, and the crash killed him. It didn't look like it was a whole lot. If you watched it live on TV, you would have expected to see him climb out of the car. But did not. He died in the accident as a result of the accident. Not exactly sure. I know they said it was head trauma, but he's wearing all the protective gear that everyone else was, and it just, the crash itself didn't look like it was that big of a deal. But if you probably don't know anything about NASCAR. If you don't, Dale Earnhardt was to NASCAR what Michael Jordan was to basketball, what Wayne Gretzky was to hockey, what Barry Bonds was to baseball. He was the biggest star in that sport, and like it or not, NASCAR is a huge sport in the U.S. It's one of the most watched sports, most watched sporting events, watched as much, if not more, than football, and just crazy. Kim Douglas, he would have been okay if he would have used the new harness, yes. But he refused to use the new harness. They had the big neck harnesses, and he wouldn't use it. And they said that if he had, he probably would have survived the crash. But he was old school, wanted to do it his way, and you hear everybody say he died doing what he loved. I'm pretty sure that's not how you would want to die, but to each his own. But he was to NASCAR what Wayne Gretzky was to hockey, Barry Bonds was to baseball. Even if you hate Barry Bonds is probably a bad choice, because a lot of people hate Barry Bonds because he used steroids. Hans device, is that what it was called, Eric? Hans device? I don't know. I'm not a NASCAR fan. When I worked for Sylvania used to sponsor NASCAR races, so I've been to a bunch. The ones that they have every year up in New Hampshire, I believe it's Loudon. I would go to a lot of the events. To go to the event, a lot different than watching it on TV. I can't watch a bunch of rednecks take a left-hand turn, in a Chick-fil-A car. It doesn't do anything for me. Yes, okay, Hans device. That was the one he should have been wearing that he was not. But this was a pretty big deal to anybody that was a NASCAR fan, because he was, the most popular NASCAR driver at the time. He was old. Could make the argument that maybe he should have retired because he was an old guy, especially if he wouldn't use the new protective gear, but didn't want to wear it, didn't want to use it. And Kim worked for Loudon for many years. I went to a lot of the Sylvania races as a product manager for Sylvania. I used to go to the races all the time. We would have customers up. You would get to go down in the pits. You'd get to see the car. I actually sat in when When Lowe's used to sponsor Kevin Harvick, I actually got to sit in Kevin Harvick's car, and being the big fat guy that I am, trying to squeeze into that little NASCAR was quite comical. You see why those guys are skinny. It has not a lot to do with the extra weight. There's just no room in those cars, man. You got to be a little skinny dude to fit in it, and I got to sit in it, but wasn't was very uncomfortable. I got to put the helmet on, and the neck bracelet might be the Hans device. Is this big thing that comes up almost to the bottom of the helmet that prevents your head from moving left to right, and I got to put the whole thing on. Didn't get to drive it, obviously, but I got to sit in it, and it was very uncomfortable. Free beer, yes, Eric. That is exactly why I went. There was free beer, there was prime rib. You got to sit in an air-conditioned suite, and yes, you did come with me to a couple of the events. It was free tickets. I got them every year, and we used to get like 50 free tickets at Sylvania, and most of my friends couldn't care less. They were like, yeah, NASCAR, no thanks. But you went to the event, and you got to walk around. It was huge. It was like the Super Bowl. There was so many people there. It was quite the experience to go to the event. Nope, going the wrong way here. All right. Here's one that could trigger a few people. September 11th, 2001. I was working for Sylvania. I was a pricing manager. I was sitting in my office, and early in the morning, Karina, Tori had been born that year, my daughter. She was born in July, and Karina was sitting home with her, and she called me and said, hey, a plane just flew into one of the World Trade Center towers. And I said, yeah, it's probably some idiot flying his Cessna. You're not supposed to fly over Long Island. Big deal. I got to go to work. I got a ton of shit to do today. She's like, okay, I just saw it on the news. It looks like it's a big plane. I said, couldn't be a big plane. Big planes ain't allowed to fly over Long Island. I said, gotta go. I hang up. Like 15 minutes later, she calls me up and she's like, no, this was a commercial airliner. They just showed it on the news. And just as she said that, my buddy JP walks into the office and he's like, dude. I'm like, Karina just called me. I'm trying to get it online, but I can't get it. He's like, where's there a TV in the building? I'm like, in the fitness center. We went downstairs to the fitness center. There was probably 30 people standing around the TVs watching it on TV. And as we watched it on TV, the second plane hit the building, and we stood there silent. There was 30 people in the room. Not a person spoke a word. And we watched the second plane hit the building, and we stood there long enough to watch the two towers collapse. And then everybody went back to their office and just sat there. Never heard that building. They used to make fun of the wing that I worked in, and they called it the morgue, because everybody was always so quiet, and everybody was very professional, and people weren't friendly and chatty in that section of the building that I worked in. But that day, the whole building was just dead silent. And this is one of those things that everybody remembers where they were when this happened. It was a very, very odd day, just because of how quiet everybody was when it was going on. And everybody was on the phone. I was a pricing manager at the time. One of my sales territories was New York, and I got on the phone and called every one of my sales guys, made sure nobody was there, and everybody's like, yep, gotta go. You know, everybody knew somebody that had worked at the World Trade Center or worked in the plaza, and people were glued to their TVs for 3 days watching the rescue efforts. My parents were coming back from Boston that day. Karen LaBelle, she lived in Tennessee at the time. Carrie Silver, I was mopping my kitchen floor and got a phone call. It just said, turn on the TV. Ruthie, I worked for GE Financial, and I think the whole world went quiet. The creepiest thing was in the days after that. Where I worked in Danvers, we would go out every day, and we would walk around the building to get a little bit of exercise. And we were in the landing pattern for Logan Airport. Every day when you would walk around, you would hear planes flying over. For almost a week after that, every time we walked outside, it was dead quiet. It wasn't just that day. It was for weeks after. The whole world was just quiet. Yeah. Bob left for boot camp less than a month later. Thank you very much. Bob Latundra, retired U.S. Navy right there. Karina Holden, baby girl, watching the news and crying. Karen LaBelle, don't know when my parents' plane was till 12 p.m. They were told to land in Detroit. They forced every plane that was in the air. They said, land, whatever the closest airport is to you, land. All the planes had to land. Yeah, Fuffy, yes. Uncle Paul worked at Logan Airport at the time. That's right. He had tried getting me a job there a couple times, fueling planes, but it never worked out. But yeah, your dad was a mechanic at the airport at the time that happened. Both Dad and I in separate cars heading from Lynn to the Cape. Both of us saw the planes take off that morning. Yep, pretty crazy day, especially for those of us that live in Boston. We were right here, and most of those planes took off out of Logan Airport for the last time, and completely changed the way we live. The world we live in today is dramatically different because of that, and we all got to watch it live on TV. Kim, I was sleeping. My mom woke me up and said, we're under attack. It's Pearl Harbor all over again. And by the time I got to the hospital where she was, the place was surrounded by armed guards. Kerry was living in Lawrence at the time. You hear the old timers all the time. They say, oh, yeah, where were you when JFK got shot? If you were alive when JFK got shot, everybody knew where they were and what they were doing. This was the equivalent for people of our generation. Everybody can tell you where they were and what they were doing on September 11th, 2001. Definitely not a good day in this country's history, and something that nobody will ever forget. Ever. Boston Marathon bombing. April 15th, 2013. I was almost at this event. A friend of mine that I worked with at Sylvania, I had just left Sylvania. This was the year that I didn't work. I didn't work in 2013. I had left Sylvania January 1st, and I had a 1-year no-compete, so I wasn't allowed to work for a lighting company, so I was home at the time this happened. My buddy John, who was still working for Sylvania, said, hey, I can get tickets to the Red Sox. The Red Sox play that day. They play, it's the Boston Marathon, and the Red Sox play an afternoon game that day every day with the Boston Marathon is running. Kind of stupid to have those two events at the same time, whatever they do. He called me up. He said, I can get tickets. Do you want to go? I want to get in early. I want to, go start to watch the start of the marathon. Then we'll go to the game, and then we'll watch the finish of the marathon. We'll drink all day. It'll be great. And I'm like, I don't want to go watch the marathon. I don't want to. It's like watching NASCAR, only it's watching a bunch of skinny fucks run. I have no interest in it. None whatsoever. He was trying to convince me to go with him and a couple of his buddies, and last minute he canceled, and he just said, yep, not interested, don't want to go. And then I remember hearing on TV, I didn't actually get to see it live on TV, but it happened live on TV. It was right near the finish line, which is where he wanted to go. That's where he wanted to hang out, and I'm like, yeah, not interested. So it was kind of a good decision on my part that I decided not to go. But it was a huge day because, like I said, there was the Red Sox game and the Boston Marathon bombing. It's shocking that so few people died in this event with the number of people that were actually there. But I was home. Karen LaBelle, I was talking about going with Jeremy and the kids to go to the finish line, but money issues stopped us. That's probably one of the times that you're quite happy that you didn't have money. Jeremy Cook had friends that were in and about Boston. Crazy stuff. It's people doing fucked up shit like this. I don't know. I don't understand it. You can be angry, but when your anger gets to this point, I don't quite understand it. But this is the stuff that we all remember happening, crazy stuff happening live on TV. And thankfully, I've never had to be part of any of this stuff. Getting into some little less horrific stuff. Everybody remembers the Super Bowl halftime show, February 1st, 2004, and everybody got to see Janet Jackson's boobie. Yeah. Ma watched it on TV and the events and finding the brothers that did it. Yeah, I watched the events after on the Boston Marathon bombing. I watched them scouring down the entire city to find those two guys. And they should have shot them both, but they only ended up killing one of the two brothers that did it. And the other guy's now in jail, and I think he had his death sentence removed, which is, if that guy doesn't fucking deserve to die, I don't know who does. But yeah, let's get on to the boobies. Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson doing the Super Bowl halftime show, and at the very end of the show, Justin Timberlake grabbed a little leather top there and popped out a little Janet Jackson boobie live on TV. Everybody got to see some boobie. Yeah, Jeremy Cook already got to see it in Playboy, but the whole world got to see Janet Jackson's boobie and that little weird thing that she's wearing on her nipple. I want to know how it's attached. Is that like a tassy where it's just kind of stuck on her? Or is her nipple pierced and she's got that, body armor covering up her boob? Yeah, that's just it. They spun this after they found out all the outrage of it. But if you watch, Justin Timberlake clearly reaches over and grabs it and rips it off. And she just she doesn't cover her tit. She puts her hands up like, oh my God. But she leaves her tit exposed. So for them to try and say that this wasn't planned and they didn't know it was going to happen and it was a wardrobe malfunction. Yeah, if you grab somebody's shirt and rip it off, you're probably going to see their boobs. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. Definitely planned. No doubt about it. The Super Bowl now has the lamest fucking halftime shows. I don't watch the halftime show. I usually come out in my studio and play my guitar during the halftime show. This one here was one that I got to see. I watched this happen. This was absolute crazy, total shit show. And I don't know. I wasn't quite as shocked. Big deal. It's boobies feed the world, man. It's what boobs are for. People freaking out about it. You could see who the uptight people were that were all freaking out. Oh my God, Janet Jackson showed her boob, and I was disappointed she didn't show both. I was also disappointed that she had the body armor covering her boob. But I mean, if you watch the Moose and Squirrel show, were you really offended by this? But I believe ABC was the channel that it was on that year, and they got like huge fines because people freaked out that she showed her boob on the fucking halftime show. Just stupid. I think that they should have boob on the halftime show every year. If you told me that some hot chick was going to come out and whip out her titties and I haven't seen them before, I'm watching the halftime show. Would guarantee, and I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of people, even non-football fans, if you said Sofia Vergara is going to be in the halftime show and she's going to show her titties, I'm pretty sure that would be the most watched halftime show ever. Ever. Karen LaBelle, you see more at the beach. Absolutely. And that's just it. I mean, who was really offended by this? Who? I mean, raise your hand if you were offended. Raise your hand and click this fucking show off and don't ever watch it again if you were offended by her showing some boobie. It's boobies, man. All press is good press, especially free press. 100%. Janet Jackson's career at that point, it was kind of fading away. She wasn't really the big pop star that she once was, but Justin Timberlake, since that happened, his career has completely taken off. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's sexist. She showed her boob on TV and then her career crashed. Her career had pretty much crashed before that point. That was them trying to do a resurgence on it. But because they all backpedaled, and I think that was the reason why, as everybody backpedaled and they said, "Ooh, this was a mistake. It was an accident. We didn't mean to do this." When if you watch the video, it was clear as day. When he reached over and he didn't do it fast. He reached over and grabbed it, and then he yanked it away. She knew what he was going to do. He knew what he was going to do. It was planned. It backfired because people got upset, and he said it was an accident. She said it was an accident. His career continued to take off, and have you seen Janet Jackson do anything since then? I think it was because she didn't show the other boobie. That's just me. But wasn't a fan of her music before then. Not that I hate it, just not my style. Everybody knows. Look behind me. I'm a metalhead. But definitely talented. She was a pop princess. She was during the late '80s, early '90s. She was huge. But by this point in time, her career had kind of waned. Old self-important people, yes. Who doesn't like booby? Uh-oh. Yeah, that doesn't matter. I'm not watching my own show. I usually watch my own show to get my ratings up. When I watch it, it like doubles it. Sort of a coming out party. But like I said, Bob, if she had showed both boobs without the body armor, yes. But that was kind of a tease. It's like it's a half a boobie. It's got some body armor on it, so you're really not showing a boobie. But you kind of are. It's kind of not. Gay guys. Jeremy, gay guys? You didn't like it? Is that what you're trying to say? All right, I think this is the last one, and this is the most recent one. And another one that I think is as fake and as staged as anything that I have ever seen. This was the Oscars, I believe. I don't watch any of these self-important, lots of rich people patting themselves on the back and saying, "Hey, great job, giving each other awards." Not my thing. Don't care whether it's the Grammys or the Oscar. It's a bunch of spoiled rich people patting each other on the back. I could give a fuck less. Yeah, Karina, never go halfway. Absolutely. Show the boobies or don't show the boobies. That's why they're boobies, not boobie. No one ever wants to see boobie. They want to see boobies. Plural. It's got to be more than one. So Chris Rock was the host of the Oscars. I believe it was the Oscars. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, Eric, fake. No doubt about it. And as host of the Oscars, if you've ever seen it, and I've seen clips of like Ricky Gervais ripping people, love Ricky Gervais, just ripping people and completely trashing everybody and just, bashing celebrities for being the spoiled bitches that they are. And Chris Rock was making fun of Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, who has, is it alopecia? She's going bald. So she had shaved her head. And he makes a joke and says, "Hey, I'm glad to see you going all out for your role in G.I. Jane 2. If you've never seen G.I. Jane 1, that's where Demi Moore shaves her head for the role in that movie." And he made the joke about her being bald. And if you watch it first, Will Smith laughs. And then when he sees that his wife is not laughing, he's like, "Uh-oh, I got to do something," allegedly. He gets up, he walks up to Chris Rock, and what you see there, he slaps him in the face live on TV at the Oscars. The whole thing was fucking staged. If you watch Chris Rock, he puts his hands behind his back, sticks his head out, kind of turns his head, and he's got his eyes squinted because he knows it's coming. He knows Will Smith is going to slap him in the face. Will Smith walks up, slaps him in the face, goes and sits back down, and then starts screaming, "Keep my wife's name out of your mouth." The whole thing was fake. It was staged. It was so bad. Yeah, Beats trying to catch a titty through the white noise on the cable channel you don't really get. Oh yeah, we was it Showtime or Showmax or whatever it was? Parents had the little key on the back of the TV that would lock that channel out. Yes, I remember doing that as well. But yes, this was definitely 100% staged. Chris Rock knew it was coming. Will Smith knew he was going to do it. They're trying to pretend like there's bad blood between the two of them. I don't buy it whatsoever. This was as staged can be. Will Smith got in a lot of trouble for it, so I don't think that the Academy Awards show knew that it was going to happen, but I'm pretty sure that Chris Rock and Will Smith, I mean, he was sitting right in the front row. Nobody between him and Chris Rock. Little too obvious that was pretty much staged, and they were doing it for attention. Think it was a joke. I thought it was funny. And I don't have a problem with it being staged, but come on. They're actors, and they were doing just that. They were acting. So that's my list. I'm sure I missed a whole bunch. But what do you got? What did I miss? And there's a bunch. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I could have. I wanted the ones that everybody remembers. So what are the stuff that I missed? Tell me what I missed. I put this together in about 15 minutes because I realized John wasn't going to be here, and I was like, oh, shit. I got to do a show today. Give me a topic. Let me go through my list of topics. Hey, great. I'll do that one because it's easy to put together. So I got a bunch of stuff. Blizzard of 78. Not really happening live on TV. But yeah, Blizzard of 78. Was it 4 feet of snow or 5 feet of snow in 2 days in the New England area and people stuck in their houses. My dad was a firefighter and had to go out and shovel out all the fire hydrants, and that was an absolute shit show. Not really happened live on TV. I mean, obviously there's TV coverage of it where they had to shut down, what's the fucking bridge going into Boston that I won't drive over? Tiananmen Square. Good one, Bob. The Tiananmen Square with the students protesting against the Chinese government, and there's is it that iconic photo of the students standing in front of the Chinese tank where the Chinese government shot a bunch of students in Tiananmen Square. That is a good one. I didn't even think of that one. That's fantastic. Yes, Mom, Tobin Bridge. The bridge that I won't go over because it's going to fall into the ocean without an earthquake. Jeremy, Berlin Wall, great one. I started to look at that one. Everyone remembers Ronald Reagan saying, "Gorbachev, tear down this wall." And they tore down the Berlin Wall, ended the Cold War. Great one. everybody got to watch that, and all the people coming out with their sledgehammers and hacking down the wall and reuniting Germany. What else we got? What am I missing? I was 7 and lived in a dead-end street for the blizzard of 78. I had a small space to walk and the walls of snow on each side. Yep, blizzard. So, Ma, correct me if I'm wrong. The blizzard of 78, we moved into our house in Lynn like the day that this blizzard started. My parents came back out of Boston, signing all the paperwork on the house. We moved into the house the weekend that it started. And I believe... Oh, Karina, you have a piece of the Berlin Wall. I didn't know that, and I've been married to you for 20-something years. Is that the one where Uncle Billy stepped out of my old bedroom window and fell down in the snow? Was that the blizzard of 78 or was that 83? I can't remember if that was the blizzard where my uncle decided the snow was so high, it was to my second floor window, and I remember him telling my father, I can just walk right out on that and won't fall into it. Was that 78 or was that 83, Ma, where Uncle Billy got stuck in the snowbank? She's saying yes. So my uncle decided to walk out second floor bedroom window, said, I can walk right out there on that snow and I won't fall through it. And he fell through it, and then they had to dig him out. And he was stuck with one leg up in the air. I think he was wearing a t-shirt and jeans at the time, and he just decided that, hey, that snow will hold me. Big giant snowdrift between the two houses. I was 6 years old. I vaguely remember it. I remember the blizzard of 83 more. That was a year that wasn't really a blizzard like 78 was, but we got a bunch of snowbanks. Yep, everybody had to go in and dig them out, and it was probably, 20 feet of driveway of 6 feet of snow that we had to dig out to pull my Uncle Billy out of the snowbank, and he was just laughing his ass off. Yep, Lisa, you were 8, I was 6. Actually, you were 7, because you hadn't had your birthday yet that year, but... Blizzard of 93. I don't remember the blizzard of 93. I remember 83, there was a ton of snow in 83. 78 and 83 were the two that I remember where we had a holy shit ton of snow. And back then, we always had a lot more snow than we do now. Alright, what am I missing? Yeah, JR. He probably did. OJ, yep, Bob, you missed that. We talked about OJ. We talked about, OJ was, yeah, right here. OJ Simpson, June 17th, 1994. We talked about the trial as well. That was definitely a total shit show. We also talked about the Waco siege, the LA riots, the Gulf War, the World Series earthquake, Bud Dwyer, Challenger disaster, Man Walks on the Moon, Lee Harvey Oswald. Baby Jessica. I know the, oops. God damn it. I hit the wrong button. There you go. What was the Baby Jessica? I remember it, but I don't. You're going to have to remind me. I was working at the Candlelight Motel, and we lost power for 36 hours, 93. Yep, don't remember it. Foofy, what's Baby Jessica? Help me out. I remember it, but I don't really remember what it was about. Fell down a well. Little girl fell down a well. Oh, Lisa, Princess Diana. I remember the Baby Jessica thing. I remember somebody falling down a well, but I kind of remember it, but I really don't. Princess Diana dying in the car accident with the paparazzi chasing after her. Absolutely. That was another crazy one. Not necessarily live on TV, but there was definitely tons of footage of it. The paparazzi chasing her, taking pictures of her dead body afterwards, all made it all out all over the place. The Chilean coal miners, they were trying to rescue those guys. Princess Di was murdered. Perfect Storm. That's a movie. I don't remember anything about the Perfect Storm other than the movie. Good movie, by the way. Jeremy, you really think that she was murdered? I just think that it was just their idiot driver trying to get away and crashed. Yeah, Karina, 18-month-old baby, fell in a well. I remember it, but it's one of those things that doesn't really stick with me. I don't know. Karen LaBelle, Princess Di died on my birthday. I did not know that. True events happening Gloucester. Is that what are you talking about, Ma? The perfect storm, or was that the baby Jessica? I don't know. Gloucester. The only thing that's out of Gloucester is cocaine and fish. Adam Walsh. That brought a whole new type of TV show. All the true crimes that you're doing. What was the show that his dad did? America's Most Wanted. That was all over the TV. That was something that you couldn't get away from. You know, it was I think 1983 where he was kidnapped from a Sears store. His mom got distracted. Someone took him, and they only ever found his head. Steve Harvey's Miss Universe snafu. Yes, when he announced the wrong winner. Yeesh. That was bad. I felt bad for Steve Harvey when he gets out there, because you got to think about it. He gets out there and he announces the wrong girl as the winner, and then has to go back out there and go, no, wait, sorry, I was wrong. You didn't win. You're second place. Couldn't believe they televised a funeral. What funeral? We're jumping around all over the place here. Whose funeral? Was that Princess Di's funeral? MJ? Michael Jackson? I didn't watch it. If that's the case, if that's what we're talking about, Michael Jackson's funeral, didn't watch it. Michael Jack. I know that they televised his funeral, yes, but I didn't watch it. Dude was a pedophile. Couldn't care less. I'll probably get taken off of YouTube for saying that, but I don't give a fuck. Oh, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan assassination. Nobody mentioned that one. I just thought of that. Ronald Reagan getting in the car and getting shot. How could I forget Ronnie? MJ's funeral had the country on a chokehold. I didn't watch it either. Hurricane Katrina, excellent one. Getting to see Louisiana get flooded in the aftermath of that. People sitting on their roofs for days. The Louisiana Superdome with people with no water, no electricity. What a complete shit show. The government fucking dropped the ball huge on that one. And especially where they knew that those levees in Louisiana were weak to begin with, and they knew the storm was coming, and they didn't evacuate people till it was too late. They left people in nursing homes to die. That was absolute fucking total shit show. Complete failure by the U.S. government. And on all levels, all the way down to the cities and the towns and the state and the county and the Fed. Total fuck up. Live footage of the Columbine High School shooting. Yes, seeing all those kids running out of the... and that was... There had been school shootings before it, but that was the first one that was sensationalized on TV, where they had the live footage of all the kids running out of the school. That was pretty horrific, seeing all those kids running single file out of the school. I remember watching that live on TV. It was crazy. What else am I missing? Got a few more minutes here. Anything? Anybody? Bueller? I think we hit most of them. Most of the crazy shit that we've seen. Yeah, the explosion, Challenger explosion, Fuffy, we talked about that, was 1986. I was in Spanish class in Pickering Junior High School when that happened. Got to watch it live on TV, and the whole class applauded because we thought that's what was supposed to happen. Nobody had ever seen a shuttle take off before. Crazy stuff. But we'll be back next week with my counterpart, Squirrel. Talk about something a little bit more light and not get into such a heavy topic, and something that we can have fun with next week. I appreciate everybody joining as always, and remember, the freaks don't die. We only smell that way.